Admiral Krextall stood before the massive viewing screen in his command ship. The blue planet called Earth slowly turned below them. His long, thin fingers tapped against the metal rail as he watched. Behind him, dozens of his officers worked at their stations. The soft hum of alien technology filled the air. "This will be easier than we thought," Krextall said to his second-in-command, General Vorthak. "Look at their primitive ships. Chemical. Rockets. How backward can a species be?" The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 47 star systems. Each time, it was the same story. They would arrive, show their superior weapons, and the local species would surrender. Sometimes there was a small fight, but it never lasted long. The Empire's technology was simply too advanced. For 3 months, Zephyrian scout ships had been watching Earth. They had intercepted human radio signals, television broadcasts, and military communications. What they saw made them laugh. Humans still used nuclear weapons, crude devices that the Zephyrians had stopped using centuries ago. Their fastest ships could barely leave their own planet. "Sir, we have finished our analysis," reported Commander Thexra from her station. "Human military strength is negligible. Their weapons are outdated. Their defensive capabilities are minimal. We estimate complete victory within 72 hours. Krextall nodded. This was what he expected. The humans seemed to spend most of their time fighting each other anyway. Surely they would welcome the peace and order that the Zephyrian Empire would bring. On Earth, Captain Jake Martinez sat in the command center of the Earth Defense Force. Red warning lights flashed across the room. Officers rushed between computer terminals, their faces tight with worry. The mood was tense. "Sir, we're getting more reports," said Lieutenant Amy Watson, looking up from her screen. 17 more unknown contacts in the outer solar system. They're not responding to our signals." Jake rubbed his tired eyes. For weeks, strange ships had been appearing near Earth. At first, there were only 1 or 2. Now, there were dozens. Earth's governments had tried everything: radio messages, mathematical signals, even music. The mysterious ships remained silent. "What's our status?" Jake asked. "All defense stations are on high alert," Amy replied. "The Luna base is tracking 43 unknown vessels. They're big, sir, much bigger than anything we can build." Jake walked to the main display screen. Dots of light showed the positions of the alien ships. They formed a perfect circle around Earth, just beyond the orbit of the moon. It looked like they were waiting for something. "Any word from the president?" "She's in an emergency meeting with world leaders," Amy said. "They're trying to decide what to do." In space, Admiral Krextall was also making decisions. He had divided his invasion force into 3 groups. The first would attack the major population centers. The second would destroy any military bases that tried to fight back. The third would capture important leaders and force them to surrender. "Begin Phase 1, Krextall ordered. His ships moved into position above Earth's largest cities. New York, London, Tokyo, Beijing, Moscow. All would see the power of the Zephyrian Empire at the same time. The plan was simple: destroy a few military targets, demand surrender, and accept Earth's submission. It had worked on every other world that the Zephyrians had studied human history through their intercepted broadcasts. They saw wars, conflicts, and violence. But they also saw something else. Humans seemed to give up when faced with overwhelming force. Their history books were full of armies that surrendered when they realized they could not win. "Sir, all ships." "Report ready," General Vorthak announced. "Good. Send the surrender demand to all human governments. Give them 10 minutes to respond." The message that Earth received was simple and direct. It appeared on every television screen, every computer monitor, and every communication device on the planet. The translation was perfect, which surprised everyone. People of Earth, the message began. We are the Zephyrian Empire. Your world is now under our control. Surrender immediately, and you will be treated fairly. Resist and face destruction. You have 10 minutes to decide. In the Earth Defense Force Command Center, chaos erupted. Phone calls poured in from governments around the world. Some wanted to fight. Others wanted to negotiate. A few were already talking about surrender. Jake looked at Amy. What do you think? I think they made a mistake, she said quietly. What do you mean? Amy pointed at her screen, which showed readings from the alien ships. Look at these energy signatures. They're powerful, but they're all exactly the same. Every ship has identical weapons, identical shields, identical systems. It's like they built everything from the same blueprint. Jake frowned. So that means they're predictable. If we can figure out how one ship works, we can figure out how they all work. Above Earth, Admiral Krextal checked his chronometer. 10 minutes had passed. No surrender message had come from the humans. Instead, his communication officers reported something strange. Sir, we're receiving thousands of different signals. From the planet, one officer reported. They're all saying different things. Some are asking for more time. Some are demanding we leave. Some are, well, they're insulting us, sir. Krextal was puzzled. On every other world, the government had spoken with one voice. Either they surrendered or they refused and prepared to fight. But Earth was sending hundreds of different messages in dozens of languages. It was confusing. No matter, he decided. Begin the attack. Target their military installations first. Show them our power. The first Zephyrian ships descended toward Earth's atmosphere, their weapons charged with deadly energy. In his mind, Krextal was already planning the victory celebration. This backward little world would fall just like all the others. But on Earth, Jake Martinez was issuing his own orders. Send word to all defense stations, he commanded. Do not engage unless fired upon first. But when they do attack, I want every piece of data you can collect. Weapon frequencies, shield harmonics, engine signatures, everything. We need to learn how these things work. Amy nodded and began typing furiously. Around the world, human scientists, engineers, and military officers were preparing for the same thing. They knew they were outgunned. They knew they were outnumbered. But they also knew something the aliens didn't. Humans were very good at learning from their mistakes. And they were even better at learning from their enemies' mistakes. The war was about to begin, but neither side truly understood what they were facing. The Zephyrians saw a primitive species that would quickly submit. The humans saw an advanced enemy that might teach them something valuable. Both sides were about to discover just how wrong they were. The first alien attack came at exactly noon, Earth time. Bright beams of energy shot down from the sky, striking military bases around the world. The Pentagon in Washington was hit first, followed by bases in Russia, China, and Britain. The weapons were incredibly powerful, turning concrete and steel into melted slag in seconds. Commander Lisa Parker was leading her fighter squadron over New York when the attack began. She saw the alien ships descend through the clouds like silver daggers. There were 12 of them, each one the size of a city block. Their hulls gleamed in the sunlight, and strange symbols glowed along their sides. All units, this is Eagle One, Lisa spoke into her radio. We have multiple hostile contacts over Manhattan. Weapons are hot. Engage when ready. Her squadron of 20 F-35 fighter jets spread out across the sky. They were Earth's most advanced aircraft, but they looked like toys compared to the alien ships. Lisa knew the odds were against them, but she also knew her job. Remember, she told her pilots, Collect data first, survive second. We need to learn how these things work. The alien ships ignored the human fighters at first. They were too busy destroying targets on the ground. Their energy beams carved through buildings like hot knives through butter. But they were careful not to hit civilian areas. It seemed they wanted to keep the human population alive. Lieutenant Bobby Clark was Lisa's wingman. He flew close to one of the alien ships, scanning it with every sensor his jet carried. Eagle 1, I'm getting weird readings, he reported. Their shields are fluctuating in a regular pattern, like a heartbeat. Copy that, Eagle 2. Keep recording. On the ground in Manhattan, Sergeant Kevin Brooks was running through the rubble of a destroyed army base. He was a demolitions expert, and his job was to set explosive charges on important equipment before the aliens could capture it. But as he worked, he noticed something strange. The alien weapons had left burn marks on the metal walls. But the burns weren't random. They formed patterns, like ripples on water. Kevin had seen similar patterns before in his work with electronic warfare equipment. This looks like frequency interference, he muttered to himself. He pulled out a small device that measured electromagnetic signals. When he pointed it at the burn marks, the device started beeping rapidly. Meanwhile, Dr. Helen Foster was in an underground bunker 50 miles outside the city. She was supposed to be studying alien biology, but right now there were no alien bodies to examine. Instead, she was watching the attack through satellite feeds and analyzing the data that was pouring in from the battle. Their energy weapons operate on a narrow frequency band, she told her team. Look at these readings. Every ship is using exactly the same weapon settings. It's like they're following a strict manual. Her assistant, Dr. Pete Wilson, frowned at his computer screen. That doesn't make sense. Why would an advanced civilization limit themselves like that? Helen thought about it. Maybe they're not limiting themselves. Maybe they're being efficient. If every ship uses the same settings, they don't need to train different crews or carry different spare parts. Back in the sky above New York, the alien ships finally noticed the human fighters. One of the large ships turned toward Lisa's squadron. A port opened in its hull, and smaller craft flew out. These fighter-sized ships moved incredibly fast, their sleek forms cutting through the air without making a sound. Incoming hostiles, Lisa shouted. Break formation. Evasive maneuvers. The dogfight that followed was unlike anything in human history. The alien fighters were faster and more maneuverable than the human jets. Their weapons were more powerful. Their shields could absorb direct hits from human missiles. By all rights, it should have been a massacre, but it wasn't. The alien pilots flew in perfect formation. They followed precise attack patterns. They coordinated their movements with mathematical precision. It was beautiful to watch, but it was also predictable. Lieutenant Sarah Kim was the first to figure it out. She was about to be shot down when she noticed that the alien chasing her always turned left after firing its weapons. Always. She used this knowledge to escape, then shared it with the rest of the squadron. They're following a program, she radioed to Lisa. Like a computer game. If we can figure out their patterns, we can beat them. Lisa listened to this while dodging energy blasts. All units, start looking for patterns. These guys might be smarter than us, but they're not more creative. The battle raged for 2 hours. Lisa lost 8 of her 20 pilots, which was a terrible price to pay. But the aliens lost 4 of their fighters, which shocked everyone. According to their own estimates, the Zephyrians should have won without taking any losses at all. In his command ship, Admiral Kreckstall was receiving similar reports from around the globe. Human resistance was stronger than expected. More importantly, the humans were learning fast. Sir, we're detecting changes in human tactics, reported Commander Thexra. They've started using unpredictable flight patterns. They're mixing old aircraft with new ones. Some of their pilots are using maneuvers that our computers say are impossible. Kreckstyle studied the tactical displays. The humans were indeed doing impossible things. They were flying their aircraft beyond safe limits. They were using weapons in ways they weren't designed for. They were working together in chaotic formations that somehow achieved better results than proper military order. Increase our attack intensity, he ordered. We'll overwhelm them with superior firepower. But on Earth, the humans were already adapting to this strategy too. In a basement laboratory in Tokyo, Dr. Yuki Tanaka had been studying the electromagnetic readings that Kevin Brooks had discovered. She realized that the alien shields operated on the same frequency as common electronic devices. If we modify our radar systems, she explained to her team, we might be able to disrupt their defenses. Within hours, her discovery was being shared around the world through encrypted channels. Human engineers began modifying their equipment, turning commercial electronics into makeshift weapons. Cell phone towers became shield disruptors. Radio stations became jamming devices. Even civilian electronics stores contributed by providing spare parts. The Zephyrians had never seen anything like it. On their homeworld, scientific discoveries took years to implement across their empire. Everything had to be tested, approved, by committees, and manufactured according to strict standards. But humans were sharing ideas instantly and building weapons from whatever they could find by the end of the first day. The alien invasion had stalled. They controlled several military bases and had destroyed many human weapons. But they had also lost ships, and they were facing a level of resistance they hadn't expected. Doctor Helen Foster was working late in her bunker when her team finally got their hands on a piece of alien technology. A damaged alien fighter had crashed near Denver, and the wreckage was brought to her lab for analysis. "This is incredible," she whispered as she examined the alien circuits. "Their technology is at least 1,000 years ahead of ours. But look at how it's built." Her assistant Pete leaned over her shoulder. "It's so neat. Everything is perfectly organized." "Exactly. There's no redundancy, no backup systems, no improvisation. It's efficient, but it's also fragile. If one component fails, the whole system shuts down." Helen began to smile. She was starting to understand something important about their enemies. The Zephyrians had achieved perfection in their technology. Every component worked exactly as designed. Every system operated at peak efficiency. There was no waste, no chaos, no unpredictability. And that, Helen realized, might be their greatest weakness. Human technology was messy. It was inefficient. Different countries used different standards, different designs, different approaches to the same problems. But this chaos also made it flexible. When one approach failed, humans tried another. When their best weapons didn't work, they built new ones from whatever they could find. The aliens had never faced an enemy like this before. They were used to fighting civilized species that built their technology the same way the Zephyrians did, carefully, efficiently, predictably. As Helen worked through the night, analyzing alien circuits and comparing them to human designs, she began to develop a plan. It was crazy, dangerous, and would require coordination between dozens of countries and thousands of scientists. But if it worked, it might give humanity its first real chance to strike back. The war was just beginning, and both sides were learning hard lessons. The aliens were discovering that technological superiority wasn't always enough. The humans were discovering that their apparent weaknesses might actually be strengths. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new discoveries, and new surprises for both sides. Major Steve Collins crouched behind the ruins of a gas station in downtown Detroit. His uniform was torn and dirty, and his face was covered in soot. Around him, 20 soldiers waited for his signal. They carried a strange mix of weapons. Some were standard military rifles. Others were jury-rigged devices that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. "Remember the plan," Steve whispered into his radio. "We hit fast, we hit hard, and we get out before they know what happened." "Jenkins, you ready with the surprise?" Corporal Mike Jenkins grinned and patted a large backpack filled with what looked like old television arts and car batteries. "Ready as I'll ever be, sir." This thing should give their shields a real headache. 3 days had passed since the alien invasion began. The Zephians now controlled major military bases in 12 countries, but they were learning that controlling territory on Earth was much harder than they had expected. Humans didn't fight like other species. They didn't form neat battle lines or follow predictable strategies. Instead, they popped up everywhere, using tactics that made no military sense, but somehow worked. Steve's target was an alien command post that had been set up in the ruins of a shopping mall. The aliens had placed their equipment in the center of the building and posted guards at all the entrances. It looked like a perfect defensive position, but Steve had been watching them for hours, and he had noticed something important. The aliens changed their guard shifts at exactly the same time every 4 hours. They always used the same patrol routes. They always checked the same hiding spots. It was as if they were following a textbook that never changed. "All units, this is Detroit." "Base," came a voice over Steve's radio. "We're tracking 17 alien ships heading your way. You've got maybe 10 minutes before they arrive." Steve smiled grimly. Perfect timing. The aliens always sent reinforcements when their bases were attacked. And they always sent exactly the same number of ships, flying in exactly the same formation. Human commanders around the world had started using this predictability against them. "Move out," Steve ordered. His team split into 3 groups. The first group created a distraction at the main entrance, firing their weapons and making lots of noise. The second group snuck around to the back entrance. Steve's group went straight through the roof. The aliens inside the mall were just as predictable as the ones outside. When the shooting started at the front entrance, they all rushed to investigate. This left their command equipment unguarded for exactly 90 seconds, just enough time for Steve's team to drop through a skylight and plant Jenkins' device. "What is this thing supposed to do again?" asked Private Lisa Murphy as Jenkins connected the device to an alien computer terminal. "Dr. Foster says it should overload their power systems," Jenkins explained, his hands working quickly with wires and circuits. "Something about feedback loops and harmonics. I don't understand the science, but I trust her math." The device Jenkins was building came from an idea that Dr. Helen Foster had shared with resistance cells around the world. She had discovered that alien technology was designed to be incredibly safe. Their power systems had multiple safeguards to prevent overloads. But those same safeguards could be turned against them by feeding the right kind of signal into a non-alien computer. Humans could trick the safety systems into shutting down everything connected to it. It was like convincing a smoke detector that the entire building was on fire. "Done," Jenkins announced. "Let's get out of here." The team escaped through the same skylight they had entered. 30 seconds later, Jenkins pressed a button on a small remote control. Inside the mall, his device began sending carefully crafted signals into the alien computer network. The results were spectacular. Lights flickered throughout the building. Alien equipment sparked and smoked. Most importantly, the force field that protected the mall's main power core began to fluctuate wildly. "Now!" Steve shouted. His team fired everything they had at the weakened force field. Rifles, rocket launchers, and even a few grenades that someone had modified with electronic components. The alien defenses, already confused by Jenkins' device, couldn't adapt fast enough to the chaotic mix of attacks. The power core exploded in a brilliant flash of blue light. The blast took out most of them all and left a crater where the alien command post had been. Steve's team was thrown to the ground by the explosion, but they were all alive. "Detroit Base, this is Collins," Steve reported, grinning despite his ringing ears. "Target destroyed. And I think we just figured out how to make their own technology work against them." Similar attacks were happening around the world. In London, Captain Emma Thompson was leading a raid on an alien supply depot. In Tokyo, Colonel Jack Yamamoto was testing a new weapon that turned alien energy beams back at their own ships. In Sydney, Lieutenant Commander Rachel Davis was using modified fishing boats to attack alien vessels that had landed in the harbor. Humans were not winning these battles through superior firepower. They were winning through creativity, unpredictability, and a willingness to try things that no sane military would attempt. Engineer Carol Davis was working in a secret laboratory beneath the streets of Chicago. She was surrounded by pieces of alien technology that had been salvaged from crash sites and captured bases. Her job was to figure out how alien power cores worked, and more importantly, how to make them explode. "The key is the safety protocols," she explained to her team. "These power cores are designed to shut down safely if anything goes wrong. But what if we make them think something is going wrong when it isn't?" She had been working for 18 hours straight, fueled by coffee and determination. The breakthrough had come when she realized that alien power cores used the same basic principles as human nuclear reactors, but with much more sophisticated safety systems. If we can convince the safety system that the core is about to explode, it will try to vent the energy safely, Carol continued. But if we block the venting process at just the right moment. Her assistant, Dr. Matt Rodriguez, looked nervous. "Won't that actually cause an explosion?" Carol grinned. "That's the idea. We turn their own safety features into weapons." Within hours, Carol's discovery was being shared with resistance groups around the world. Human engineers began building devices that could trigger alien power cores remotely. It was dangerous work. Several labs were destroyed during testing, but the results were worth the risk. The Zephyrians had never experienced anything like this. Their power cores were supposed to be foolproof. The safety systems had been tested for centuries and had never failed. But humans weren't trying to make the cores work properly. They were trying to make them fail in very specific ways. Captain Ron Baker was flying his F-16 fighter jet over the ruins of Los Angeles when he got the call. "Falcon Leader, this is Command. We need you to test the new toys." Ron looked at his instrument panel, which had been heavily modified over the past few days. Human engineers had been adding new equipment to every aircraft they could find. Some of it was alien technology that had been reverse engineered. Some of it was human technology that had been modified to work with alien systems. And some of it was completely improvised devices that shouldn't work at all, but somehow did. "Copy that, Command. What's the target?" "Alien Patrol Group, heading northwest from downtown. 3 ships, standard formation. Perfect for testing." Ron smiled. The aliens always flew in standard formations. They always used the same tactics. They always responded to threats in the same predictable ways. It was starting to feel like fighting a very advanced, but very unimaginative computer program. "Roger. Falcon 2 and 3, you ready to try something stupid?" His wingmen, Lieutenant Corinne White and Captain Danny Green, checked in. Their planes were loaded with an experimental mix of human and alien weapons. The combination shouldn't work according to any textbook, but human pilots had stopped caring about textbooks 3 days ago. The alien patrol was easy to find. 3 sleek ships flying in a perfect triangle formation, exactly 2 kilometers apart, exactly 50 meters above the ground. They were scanning the ruins below, looking for human resistance fighters. "Okay, people," Ron said. "Remember what Command taught us. These guys have better shields than we do, but they can't adapt to chaos. So let's give them some chaos. The three human fighters attacked from different directions, using completely different tactics. Ron came in high and fast, firing conventional missiles. Karan approached low and slow, using a modified alien energy weapon. Danny attacked from the side, launching a mix of human rockets and alien plasma charges. The alien ships tried to respond, but their computer systems couldn't process what was happening. They were programmed to handle organized attacks from military formations. They could deal with energy weapons or kinetic weapons, but not both at the same time. They could fight fast attackers or slow attackers, but not a mix of both. The result was confusion. The alien ship's defensive systems couldn't decide which threat to prioritize. Their shields flickered between different configurations, trying to adapt to weapons that shouldn't exist. Two of the alien ships were destroyed in the chaotic battle. The third managed to escape, but only after taking heavy damage. Ron's team lost one fighter, but they had proven something important. Human unpredictability was becoming a weapon in itself. That in. Admiral Krextall stood in his command chamber, staring at reports that made no sense. According to his computers, the war should have been over 5 days ago. Earth should have surrendered after seeing the power of Zephyrian technology. Instead, human resistance was growing stronger every day. "Sir, we have another problem," Commander Vexra announced, her voice tight with worry. "The humans have broken into our communication network." Krextall turned sharply. "That's impossible. Our encryption codes are unbreakable. We've been using them for over 300 years without a single security breach." "I know, sir. But somehow they've done it. They're listening to our tactical communications. They know where our ships are going before we send them." In a hidden bunker beneath the ruins of Boston, Dr. Janet Moore smiled as she listened to alien voices speaking in their own language. Her computer screens showed dozens of intercepted messages, all automatically translated by software that shouldn't exist. "How did you crack their encryption?" asked her assistant, Private Tim O'Connor. Janet shrugged. "I didn't crack it. I went around it." She pointed to a complex diagram on her whiteboard. It showed human communication satellites, alien ships, and lines connecting them in a web that looked like chaos. "The aliens have perfect security when they talk to each other," Janet explained. "But they have to use our satellites to relay some of their signals around the planet. And our satellites weren't designed to handle alien encryption." Tim frowned. So the satellites treat the alien signals like any other data. They compress them, route them, and sometimes store them temporarily. During that process, little pieces of information leak out. The aliens never thought to secure against that, because no other species has ever built a communication network as messy and redundant as ours. It was true. Human communication technology was a chaotic mix of different systems built by different companies in different countries over many decades. Nothing was standardized. Nothing was efficient. Signals bounced between cell towers, satellites, fiber optic cables, and radio relays in patterns that changed every few seconds. The Zephyrians had assumed this chaos was a sign of primitive technology. In reality, it was making their own systems vulnerable in ways they had never considered. "Plus," Janet continued, "they keep using the same communication protocols. Once I figured out their basic patterns, I could predict what they were going to say before they said it." This was becoming a pattern that Admiral Krextall was starting to recognize. The humans seemed to thrive on chaos and unpredictability, while his own forces relied on order and efficiency. What he had thought were human weaknesses were turning out to be their greatest strengths. General Alex Thompson was studying maps in his temporary command post outside Washington, D.C., the capital. City was in ruins, but the human military was far from defeated. If anything, the destruction had made them more determined. "Sir, we're getting reports from around the world," said his aide, Major Patricia Liu. "Our counterattacks are working. The aliens are pulling back from several positions." Alex nodded, but he didn't smile. He had been fighting for 6 days, and he understood something that worried him. The humans were winning individual battles, but they were losing the war. The aliens had more ships, better weapons, and reinforcements coming. Earth needed something more than clever tactics. "What's the status on Operation Chaos?" he asked. "Doctor, Foster says they're ready to test it." "But sir, if this goes wrong—" "If this goes wrong, we're all dead anyway," Alex finished. "Give the order." Operation Chaos was the most desperate plan humans had ever attempted. It was based on Dr. Helen Foster's analysis of alien psychology and technology. The idea was simple in theory, but incredibly dangerous in practice. Human scientists had discovered that all Zephyrian technology was connected through a single, galaxy-spanning network. This network allowed the aliens to share information instantly across their entire empire. It was one of their greatest achievements. But Dr. Foster had realized it was also their greatest vulnerability. The problem with perfection, she had explained to the world's top scientists during a secret video conference, is that it doesn't adapt well to imperfection. Her plan was to introduce chaos into the alien network. Not random chaos, but carefully designed chaos that would spread through their systems like a virus. If it worked, it would cripple alien technology across the entire invasion fleet. If it failed, it might alert the alien empire to Earth's location and bring an even larger invasion force. Dr. Foster was working in a laboratory that had been hastily built in an abandoned subway tunnel beneath New York. Around her, dozens of the world's best computer programmers, engineers, and mathematicians worked on different pieces of the plan. "Remember," she told her team, "we're not trying to break their network. We're trying to confuse it. We want their computers to start doubting their own data." The weapon they were building wasn't made of metal and explosives. It was made of information, carefully crafted data packets that would mimic alien communication patterns while carrying subtle errors. When the alien network tried to process this information, it would become confused and start making mistakes. "It's like teaching someone to speak a language almost correctly," explained Dr. Kevin Park, one of the programmers. "They'll understand most of what you're saying, but the small errors will make them question everything." On his command ship, Admiral Kreckstall was receiving increasingly disturbing reports. Human attacks were becoming more coordinated and more effective. Worse, his own ships were starting to experience technical problems that made no sense. "Sir, the Harmony of Stars is reporting navigation errors," Commander Thexer announced. "Their computers are giving conflicting readings about their position." "Check their systems for damage," Kreckstall ordered. "We did, sir. There's no damage. The computers are working perfectly. They're just disagreeing with each other." This was the beginning of Operation Chaos. Human-designed data packets were spreading through the alien network, carrying subtle errors that accumulated over time. Navigation systems started getting slightly different readings. Weapons systems began targeting coordinates that were a few meters off. Communication systems started translating messages with small but important mistakes. None of the errors were big enough to notice immediately. But as they accumulated, alien operations became less efficient, less coordinated, less precise. Colonel Nina White was leading a raid on an alien supply depot when she first saw the effects of Operation Chaos. Her team was prepared for the usual perfectly coordinated alien response. Instead, they found chaos. "Something's wrong with them," reported Sergeant Mark Taylor over the radio. "Their patrol routes are overlapping. Some of their guards aren't showing up at all." Nina watched through binoculars as alien soldiers moved around the depot in confused patterns. Some guards were checking areas that other guards had already checked. Others were leaving their posts to investigate false alarms that their own sensors were creating. "This is our chance," Nina told her team. "Hit them now while they're confused." The attack was the most successful human operation of the war so far. Nina's team captured an entire depot of alien supplies, including several intact power cores and communication devices. More importantly, they captured something even more valuable: alien prisoners. The Zephyrian soldiers who were captured seemed genuinely bewildered by what was happening. Through crude translation devices, they kept asking the same questions. Why were their computers giving wrong information? Why were their orders contradicting each other? Why was their technology failing them? Dr. Foster was monitoring the effects of Operation Chaos from her underground laboratory. Data from around the world showed that alien efficiency was dropping rapidly. Their response times were getting slower. Their coordination was breaking down. Their technology was still superior to human equipment, but it was no longer working at peak performance. But she also knew this advantage wouldn't last long. The aliens were smart. They would figure out what was happening and find ways to fix their systems. Operation Chaos might give humanity a few days of advantage, but it wouldn't win the war. That night, Admiral Krextol called an emergency meeting of his senior staff. The holographic display in his command chamber showed a map of Earth with red and blue markers showing the positions of alien and human forces. For the first time since the invasion began, there were more red markers than blue ones. "We're losing," he said simply. "Not because their technology is better than ours. Not because they have more ships than we do. We're losing because we don't understand them." General Vorthak shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, our reinforcements will arrive in 2 days. With additional ships, we can overwhelm their defenses." Krextol shook his head. "More ships won't help us if we don't understand what we're fighting. These humans, they think differently than any species we've encountered. They use chaos as a weapon. They turn our strengths against us. They adapt faster than our computers can calculate." He paused, studying the tactical displays. "I've been reviewing our encounters with other species. In every case, we won because we were more organized, more efficient, more predictable than our enemies. But the humans aren't trying to be organized or efficient. They're trying to be unpredictable. And it's working." Commander Vexrau looked up from Colonel Nina White crouched in the cargo bay of a modified transport plane, checking her equipment one final time. Around her, 24 of Earth's best soldiers prepared for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. They were going to attack the alien command ship directly. "Remember," Nina told her team, "we're not trying to destroy their ship. We're trying to capture it. Intelligence says their admiral is the key to ending this war." Sergeant Mark Taylor looked up from his weapons check. "Ma'am, how exactly are we supposed to capture a ship that's 5 kilometers long and protected? By shields we can barely scratch?" Nina smiled grimly. "The same way we've been fighting this whole war. We do something they don't expect." The plan was the most desperate gamble humanity had ever attempted. For the past week, human forces around the world had been feeding false information into the alien communication network. They had convinced the aliens that Earth's governments were preparing to surrender, but that resistance leaders were planning to destroy major cities rather than submit. This lie served 2 purposes. First, it had drawn most of the alien fleet, TO positions around Earth's major population centers. Second, it had convinced Admiral Krextol to bring his command ship down into Earth's atmosphere so he could personally oversee the surrender negotiations. What the aliens didn't know was that there were no surrender negotiations planned, and there were no resistance leaders planning to destroy cities. There was only Nina White and her team flying directly toward the most heavily defended ship in the galaxy. On his command ship, Admiral Krextal was reviewing the latest intelligence reports. According to his analysts, human resistance was finally crumbling. Several world leaders had sent messages indicating they were ready to discuss surrender terms. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human settlement called Washington," Commander Thex Ra announced. "They're requesting safe passage for their negotiators." Krextal nodded. This was what he had been expecting. The humans had fought bravely, but they were finally accepting reality. No species could stand against the might of the Zephyrian Empire forever. Grant their request, but maintain full security protocols. These humans have proven they're capable of deception. What Krextal didn't realize was that the transmission from Washington was fake. It had been sent by Dr. Janet Moore's team using communication equipment they had built from captured alien technology. The negotiators requesting safe passage were actually Nina, White's assault team. Nina's transport plane approached the alien command ship, broadcasting the false identification codes that Dr. Moore had provided. The massive vessel hung in the sky above Washington, D.C. like a silver mountain, its hull gleaming in the afternoon sun. "Landing bay doors are opening," reported the pilot. "They're actually letting us in." "Stay calm," Nina reminded her team. "Remember, we're supposed to be diplomats until we reach the command center." The transport landed in a cavernous hangar filled with alien vehicles and equipment. As Nina's team disembarked, they were met by a group of Zephyrian guards. The aliens were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. They wore uniforms that seemed to be made of liquid metal. "Welcome aboard," one of the aliens said, speaking perfect English through a translation device. "Admiral Krexdale is waiting to meet with you." Nina and her team followed the guards through corridors that were both beautiful and alien. The walls seemed to glow with their own light, and the floor felt soft beneath their feet, despite appearing to be made of crystal. "This place is incredible," whispered Corporal Lisa Murphy. "How do we destroy something like this?" "We don't destroy it," Nina replied quietly. "We take it." They were led to a large chamber in the center of the ship. Admiral Krextal stood before a massive viewing screen that showed Earth below. He was taller than his guards, with skin that seemed to shimmer in the strange alien light. "So," Krextal said, turning to face the humans, "you have finally come to surrender." Nina stepped forward, trying to look defeated. "We've lost too many people. Our cities are in ruins. We can't fight anymore." Krextal studied her carefully. "You have fought well for such a primitive species. But you must understand that resistance is futile. The Zephyrian Empire spans 47 star systems. We have fleets that could turn your entire planet to ash." "We understand," Nina said. "That's why we're here." As she spoke, she slowly moved closer to the Admiral. Her team spread out behind her, trying to look casual while positioning themselves near key control stations around the room. Krextal continued, speaking, explaining the terms of Earth's surrender. But Nina wasn't listening. She was studying the alien command center, looking for weaknesses that her team could exploit. Dr. Helen Foster had briefed her on Zephyrian psychology. The aliens believed in order, efficiency, and predictable behavior. They would never expect a diplomatic team to suddenly become a military strike force. More importantly, they would never expect humans to try capturing their command ship instead of destroying it. "There is one thing I don't understand," Nina said, interrupting Krextal's speech. "Why did you choose our planet? There must be easier worlds to conquer." Krextal seemed pleased by the question. "Your species showed promise. Despite your primitive technology, you had achieved space travel. With proper guidance, humans could become valuable members of our empire. Guidance, education, training. We would teach you to think logically, to organize your societies efficiently, to eliminate the chaos that holds your species back." Nina almost laughed. The aliens still didn't understand. They thought human chaos was a weakness to be corrected, not a strength to be feared. That's very generous, she said. Then she gave a subtle hand signal to her team. Everything happened at once. Sergeant Taylor threw a device that Dr. Carol Davis had built, a small box that would overload every alien computer within 50 meters. Corporal Murphy fired her modified rifle at the main power coupling. The rest of the team scattered throughout the command center, attacking key systems with weapons that combined human and alien technology in ways that shouldn't work but did. The alien guards tried to respond, but they were confused by the sudden chaos. Their training had prepared them for organized attacks by military formations, not for a handful of humans using impossible tactics with improvised weapons. Admiral Krextal himself was the most confused of all. "This is impossible," he said, his voice filled with genuine bewilderment. "You came here to surrender." "No," Nina replied, pointing her weapon at him. "We came here to win." The battle for the command center lasted only minutes, but those minutes changed everything. Human weapons, designed to exploit weaknesses in alien technology, crippled the ship's computer systems. The chaos that Dr. Davis's device created spread through the ship's network, shutting down weapons, shields, and engines. Most importantly, Nina's team captured Admiral Krextal alive. "This is Colonel Nina White to all human forces," she broadcast from the alien admiral's own communication system. "We have control of the enemy command ship. Repeat, we have control of the enemy command ship." Around the world, human fighters, who had been barely holding defensive positions, suddenly went on the attack. The capture of the command ship had thrown the entire alien fleet into confusion. Without their admiral's coordination, individual alien ships began making mistakes, contradicting each other, and losing the efficient teamwork that had been their greatest advantage. Admiral Krextal sat in his own command chair, now guarded by human soldiers. He stared at Nina with something that might have been respect. "How?" he asked simply. "You made a mistake," Nina explained. "You assumed we thought the same way you do. You assumed we wanted order, efficiency, predictability. But we don't. We're comfortable with chaos because we've lived with it our entire history." She gestured at the captured command center, where her soldiers were working alongside human technicians who had been flown in to study the alien systems. "You spent months studying our technology and concluded we were primitive. But you never studied our psychology. You never tried to understand how we think." Krextal was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice heavy with a realization that was almost painful. "We have made many mistakes," he admitted. "But our greatest mistake was not underestimating your technology. It was underestimating your adaptability." Over the next several hours, Nina learned things about the Zephyrian Empire that changed humanity's understanding of the galaxy. The Empire was vast and powerful, but it was also rigid and predictable. They had conquered dozens of species by being more organized and efficient than their enemies, but they had never faced a species like humanity, a species that had learned to thrive in chaos, to adapt constantly, and to turn disadvantages into advantages. "Your empire," Nina said to Krextal. "What happens when you encounter a problem you can't solve with superior organization?" Krextal thought about this. "Such problems are rare. We study them until we understand them and develop efficient solutions. But what if the problem changes while you're studying it? What if the solution that worked yesterday doesn't work?" Today, the alien admiral was quiet for a very long time. Finally, Nina offered him a communication device. "I think you need to send a message to your empire." The message that Admiral Krextal sent to the Zephyrian High Command was unlike any. "Report in their hist.